All right, shalom, everyone. It sounds so loud in an empty room, but all right, so welcome to the Tuesday night Torah study. And we're very excited to have all of you here virtually, and we're looking forward to when it could be actually live and in person, at least certainly for the people here locally. We'll talk a little bit about that here in a few minutes during the announcements part. Okay, so for those of you that are new, and I'm sure we'll have some new people on there as the thing goes on here, so we're going to do some prayer time, take up the prayer needs within the body here, and then after the prayer time, we'll go through the readings. This week's reading is a double portion. It's Tazria and Metzora. Okay, so it's Leviticus chapter 12 through 15:33, which I believe is the end of that chapter. Okay, yep. All right, so we're going to read some of Leviticus chapter 12, which is actually fairly short. It's only 8 verses. We're going to read that and all of 13, 14, and 15. Okay? And then we're going to go ahead and discuss the Torah portion that we just read. All right, so that's the agenda for tonight. That's sort of how we're going to play this through. And so if you're online, we do have some people helping to man the online situation there. We've got Manny, who's going to read your prayer requests and questions and comments out loud over the mic here for me to hear. And then we probably have Rob and Kurt on there as well, who are maintaining the peace, bringing structure to the live stream. So please give them all of your respect as they are there to bring this whole process, to come through in a very peaceful and enjoyable way as we seek to understand our Heavenly Father and the things that He gives us through these chapters as we study His Word in the yearly Torah portion cycle. All right. So let's go ahead and begin with prayer time. And I guess I'll start by mentioning a few things here. Because, Manny, are you going to be ready here? Or are you ready already? A few? Okay. How many we got on there? Okay, so it's already over 100. All right, so please, if you're on the chat at this point, let's not chat. Only type in if you have a prayer or praise, just so it'll be easier for Manny to kind of make note of these things. Okay, so let's not just be chatting. Instead, let's go ahead and make sure that it's only for praise and prayer. All right, that's better. Okay. And I think I'll just announce a little bit now, and I guess I'll announce it a little bit later. Okay, so for prayer, of course, I do have some praises myself. Rebbitzin made it successfully down to Florida. Okay, so she had flights, and the rest of us made it successfully through leaving at our house at 4:45 in the morning to get her to the airport for an early flight. And so that wasn't fun, having to get up that early and be out, exit, and be on the way to Chattanooga to catch the flight. But everything worked out well. So she's successfully back in Fort Myers with her father, well, in Cape Coral area. And we're hoping that she'll be back here in a couple of weeks as we're getting some of the situations down there aligned in a slightly better alignment so that he can have some people there to take care of him. And so we did enjoy her being back for the little while she was back. And I know she's on there. We miss you, darling. Okay, so that's the first praise. Second was a prayer request / praise. I don't know exactly what happened. If you've been following us for a few years, you know this has happened before, where I will have a problem with my leg, which can go into a bad spasm, and the next thing you know, I'm walking like on crutches. And that happened about 2 days ago and yesterday, and so it was pretty bad all day Sunday and Monday. And today it is much better. I'm still limping, but I'm able to walk. Mostly on Sunday and Monday, I needed a walking stick, or I couldn't have walked. I certainly couldn't make it up and down the staircase without any help. And so it is much better. What caused it? Not really sure. Okay. Excuse me. I'm also dealing with if you know me, I'm dealing with my allergy season stuff. So I'm not sick. I don't have any viruses. I'm just dealing with my allergy stuff. So if you've been following me for a number of years, you know that this coughing thing and the allergy thing comes to me twice a year around the feast time. And so that's what I've got going on. Anyway, but please keep it in prayer because it can be, distracting and a hindrance from that point of view. All right. Manny, you got yourself ready now? Okay, go ahead.
Okay, Knuckles, for those who missed it, please send up prayers for me. Today I had an MRI, 3 herniated discs, a dislocated rib, and L4 vertebrae shifted 30% dislocation. Wow. So much not goodness. Hang in there, brother. Rabbi Tom Mitchell prayed that Rebbetzin Julie would have a safe trip, and she did, praying for Rabbi Steve's leg problem. Steve Waffle, prayers for all affected by tornado and those who had loss of work from current issues. Don Miller, praise Yahweh that my friend did not have COVID. Praise report, no more groin pain from Lady Dive, no more groin pain. Prayers for our incarcerated and homeless brothers and sisters. Stacy would like prayer for her son who just lost his great-grandmother today. Another one from Rabbi Tom, request for prayer for my grandson Daniel. He does not allow his temper, his Yetzer Hara, to get the best of him. Anonymous unspoken prayers, please. Praises for Marco Polo and other technologies to keep us all connected during this time. Santili, protection for the unspoken, for the spokesman who told the truth about the virus, direction and preparation and provision of my Toronto fellowship and ministry. Laura DeHaven would like prayer for herself. Her sciatic muscle has been pinched and has been bedridden for about 2 months, starting to get on her nerves. I believe that. Well, I believe that's on his nerves. I'm sorry. I'm going too fast here. Olivier Hoffman, praise Yah for part-time opportunities and potential opportunities down the road. Tony, prayers for Rabbi's health and well-being. John McCormick wants to say thank you for continued prayers for the family business. It is going great. Continually expanding the business as the Father sees fit. Praise Yah. Corey Wilson, praise for still working during all this COVID and praying for those in need of shalom during this mess. Carrie Sovery, prayers for my mom. She lives 20 minutes away, but I haven't seen her since before Pesach 2017. She laid unconscious for 8 days and is now in kidney failure. Christy Washington, prayer request for Abba to open the door for a very crucial move in my life. Praise for my son and his wife have closed on their new home that they have waited patiently for. Michelle Perez, prayer for Rebbetzin Joanne and Rebbetzin Julie and Rabbi Steve and Rabbi Tom. And all those in need of prayer, praise Yah for all of you at MTOI, Rabbi Steve and Manny and Michelle and all those working hard at MTOI behind the scenes. Israel Tracy, prayers for students, families, teachers, and those making decisions. Need shalom to be contagious. Carolyn, pray for us in Oklahoma and Texas as storms move towards us tonight. Philip Mason, prayer, please, for wisdom and guidance as I make important life decisions. Kathleen Phillips, praise Yah for all those trials now being faced in my life. Prayer request to allow discernment from Yah to come through me to handle difficulties in my walk. Tony, prayers for strength to deal with the workload coming down on myself and other managers at my job and all other essential workers. Knuckles says I don't have to read this, but it's a praise. Praise Yah that we're all here. I just want to give praise that I have you all as a family. I wish I could meet you all. Rabbi Steve, Rabbi Tom, Manny, and the rest. That's awesome. Tom Lasardo, prayers for my wife Carmen. She has a swollen gland and also an unspoken. Kay Carrick, prayers for our marriage and deployment. Praying husband will come home soon. Praise Yah that we have been so financially blessed during this uncertain time. And thank you, MTOI family. Nigel Phillips, prayer request for continued peace and direction to endure and overcome obstacles to my business's success. Praise Abba for keeping the business alive during this time. Adam, he'd like to ask Yahweh's blessings for his wife. It's her birthday today, and prayers for the healing of our world. Happy birthday. Mae Morrison, many praises for all staying well. Olivia and Janet Hoffman, praises to the Almighty. It is so good to have Rabbi Steve. He helped me solve a halacha question for me with humor and compassion and peace of mind, or equals peace of mind. Richard Yetter, prayers for my oldest son's interview tomorrow. And there are a ton of unspoken prayers as well added to that. But that would be the last that I have. Okay, appreciate that. And I'm sure we have lots of praises as well that were unspoken. So that's really the opportunity for us to come together in prayer is always something that I think we all appreciate. It's not that it's in the abundance of people praying that makes anything happen. The Father will do what he's going to do regardless, but it's the bringing us together when we hear each other's needs. You know, we're told through the apostles that, and through the Messiah, that, you know, when you see your brother hungry, that you should do something. You know, James talks about this as well. If you say, well, be well and not do anything for them. But, you know, you can't really know what anybody needs unless they tell you that they're hungry or thirsty. And a lot of times people won't tell you. A lot of times, actually, the people that do tell you, and I'm not picking on everybody, you know, are people that are not so much in need. They're actually just looking to sponge a little bit. So just be careful with that. Mostly the people that really need it won't ever say a word. They don't want to be a burden. They don't want to ask. So it's good that we have an opportunity to share each other's burdens. Okay, so we keep that in prayer. Okay, now when I did say as far as sharing them, but also recognize that you should probably get counsel before you just do anything physically to mitigate them. All right? In other words, to give financing or to give anything funds to people. You know, just check with up the structure, you know, for guidance on that. All right. So I do want to have us continue to pray about the transition that we're having now with this coronavirus deal. Okay? I'll mention it now, and I guess I'll mention it again later. We should have a few more people on at this point. Yes, we only have almost 200 computers on. So I'll mention it now, and then we'll mention it again. And if you're just watching, the reason I am limping is because my leg went into spasm 2 days ago. This is something it has done before. Not really sure what caused it. I think it has to do with if I sit in a wrong position for too long, it makes my leg very unhappy, and then I can't have that happen. And then it takes a couple of days for it to kind of resolve itself. And I think I'm getting close to it getting better, because today was much better since this morning, so hopefully by tomorrow. Anyway, the coronavirus. So you are hearing, and this is important, you are hearing rhetoric about people or states coming off of the stay-at-home order. Okay, that is true. Tennessee is one of them, at least all but 6 counties. We are not in one of those counties that's not doing that. Okay, that would be the closest county nearby, which would be Hamilton County in Chattanooga, is not necessarily on the same speed as the rest, because those are the bigger, more densely populated counties. But the thing is, let's understand, it doesn't mean that everything is done now. And I'm only saying that because as far as the way that the state has put in its requirements, they're still mandating that we continue to do what it did before it put the stay-at-home order in, which is maintain the small group, social distancing, and everything else, no more than 10, et cetera. So we're waiting to see how that may change or what may change. What they're doing is allowing more businesses to open while somehow maintaining some of those things. And so we'll have to see how that goes and if they maintain that. So I don't want everybody thinking, oh, wow, so that means we're going to have services this week. No, it doesn't mean that. It's not until May 1st anyway. So it wouldn't be that quick. But the thing is, we don't know what it really looks like yet. We are monitoring it daily. We're paying attention to the actual proclamations and executive orders that are coming out of Bill Lee's office here, the governor of the state, as well as what's coming out of the White House, because Bill Lee has been very consistent in saying that
they are maintaining the White House guidelines, okay, the CDC and White House guidelines. So, don't jump to any wrong conclusions and make assumptions. Oh, I guess that means we're doing the second Passover. No, that doesn't mean that necessarily. Oh, I guess we can start coming to services. No, not until I tell you, okay? And I'm not telling you yet, just to be clear. We are watching to see whether something more official will come out so that we are maintaining our compliance with the understandings, okay? And so they are saying that things will be better, different, or changed by May 1st. Let's just see what that actually looks like. We're waiting for more clarity. Okay? That's one thing you can always expect from the government, is that things generally are as clear as mud. They'll say something but not give you the details you need to know what it really means. And so we're waiting, okay? And we do have people looking at these things that know how to speak legalese and understand that, and we're not getting what we need yet to know what that really looks like, all right? What it means, though, is the stay-at-home, orders, meaning only you can go out if it's for essential things, that's going to end. So that means other businesses may be able to be opened. You might be able to get a haircut. You may be able to do other things that, department stores may open, and you can buy clothing or whatever other things you may need that have been shut down. It doesn't mean all of a sudden that social activities are going to change for groups. All right, so let's please be careful that, because unfortunately what will happen is one person will make a statement that you hear said, you don't know whether or not that person heard it from somebody who heard it from somebody who heard it from somebody, or it's actually sourced. Okay, we source everything directly from the governor's office. Okay, so like yesterday I heard that this might be happening, so I contacted George, who helps with our legal team, and I said to George, can you go verify this? And he went on the governor's website and validated what was said. And it is true that we are among the counties here in Tennessee that will be coming off of the stay-at-home orders. However, we don't know exactly the fullness of what that looks like yet. Okay, I know I'm beating this to death a little bit, but I want to make sure you understand that. So just because you heard that you heard that you heard doesn't mean that they're hearing something. Validate it, verify it, and especially if it's part of the things happening here, you need to wait until I say it. Okay? That as far as functioning here. When I tell you it's good that it's okay to come, then it will be okay to come. Until then, we wait. Let's just be patient. I understand the desire of everyone to get together. I would love to see, on a Tuesday night, 30, 40 people in here. On a Saturday, 130 or 140 people in here. That would be great. And we'll get there. Just let this thing play out. The good news is they're trying to unwind this a little bit. And with the idea that it would be fully unwound here in the next, 30 days or so. Okay, we're hoping that. Now, of course, they're being very tentative because they want to see if they unwind it a little bit, if the numbers spike. And that's really, we don't know if they're unwinding it a little bit just so that the numbers can spike so they can say, see, we told you, and then they'll really come down hard. I don't know. If they don't spike, maybe they'll really loosen it up. There are aggressive attacks on some of the mitigating modalities like the hydroxychloroquine. They're attacking it like crazy now on the news and coming out with studies that are saying it doesn't do anything when combined with the Zithromax, etc. Who are you going to believe? Look, if you're old enough, you remember when butter was bad for you. No, wait a minute, margarine's bad for you. No, wait a minute, butter's bad for you. No, wait a minute, whatever's bad this year, 5 years from now, that'll be what's actually good for you, and the other thing's bad for you. Because we were told fats are bad for you. No, now we're told, wait, no, go on the diets that are high in fat because it's good for you. Go figure. Okay? So half the doctors out there telling everybody this stuff works, and the other half are saying, no, it doesn't. I wonder if there's an agenda playing out there. Things that make you go, But I'm sure there is. So just allow for leadership here to let you know what we're going to be doing for our policy. So even if the government here, in your opinion, has said you can come, that doesn't mean you can come until I say you can come. Let's be respectful of that, all right? Because it will be embarrassing for all if you get here and I have somebody at the door telling you to go home. So let's not do that. I will bring everybody in as fast as I think is appropriate to what the actual standing, orders are as far as what's actually going on. Okay, I will not keep you away 1 minute longer than is necessary. I promise. So that's very important. All right? All right, so we do want to pray for all those that have contacted us since the last time we got together, which was on Shabbat. And we'll keep that in prayer. And I think we're ready now to go ahead and pray. Father, we come before you, and we want to recognize you as our Creator, as King of all things. Father, we recognize that you have supreme authority over all that exists as you brought it into existence. And so, Father, we recognize with complete awe and reverence that there is no other place to bring our praise and our concerns. So, Father, we praise you for all of the things you do in our lives, those miracles, small and great, those small interventions, even if we wouldn't call them miracles, just those things that you do to remind us that you're aware of us and that you care. And that helps us to feel that connection, to ground us even deeper into our emunah and our faith, our trust that you are fully sovereign and in charge. And Father, we praise you for all of those things, whether you heard it spoken or not. Father, we know that you hear what's in our hearts. Father, we also bring before you all of our needs, our concerns, coming to you knowing and trusting fully that you hear and answer all prayer, but that your answer may not always be the answer we're looking for, but that we trust that, Father, your answer is always the right answer. And so, Father, we want to thank you for those that you heard spoken as well as the unspoken needs, knowing full well that we've laid them at the one place where resolution can come, the help can come, the redemption, the deliverance, whatever it is that someone's, the healing, all the things that we might be looking for can only come from you. So, Father, we want to thank you, praise you, giving you all glory and all honor as we come before you in Yeshua's mighty name. Amen. 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 All right. All right, so today we're doing two Torah portions. Tazria. Tazria means what? Well, I don't have enough of an audience to interact with. It means conceived. And Metzora, which is often translated leper, although we will see that it's not exactly leprosy we're dealing with. We're dealing with something called tzarat. Tzarat is not what you would call medically leprosy, but it is a skin condition that also ends up on your clothing and then can end up on the walls of your house, etc. All right? It's going to be from Leviticus chapter 12 through chapter 15. So we're going to read 12, 13, 14, and 15. If you're following along at home, you may want to go ahead and mark down on a piece of paper any verses that you want to make a comment on or ask a question about as we go through the study. All right? And that way we'll be ready when we finish reading to go through those questions or comments. After we do the readings, I will then go through some quick announcements, and we'll do that after we finish the readings, okay? And I may remind everyone a little bit more about that COVID-19 update, but we'll go through the announcements. All right, so for the readings, we've got chapter 12, which is very small, then chapter 13 and 14, which are fairly large, and 15 is, okay. I'm going to bring my daughter up to read. And let's see. I know Manny would like to read. You want to come up here and read, Manny? Okay. So why don't we do this? I'll have Brianna lead us off, and she'll read chapters 12 and 13. So those are pretty long right there. Then I'll have Manny come up and read 14, and then I'll read 15, and then we'll kind of go right into the announcements, etc. So, Brianna, why don't you come up? We'll have you read 12 and 13. He who blessed our fathers, Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, may he bless Brianna, who's come up to honor Yahweh in the Torah. May the set-apart one bless her and her family and send blessing and prosperity in all the works of her hands. Amen. Okay, she's going to read now chapters 12 and 13.
Yeah. And Yahweh spoke to Moshe, saying, Speak to the children of Israel, saying, When a woman has conceived and has given birth to a male child, then she shall be unclean 7 days, as in the days of her monthly separation she is unclean. And on the 8th day the flesh of his foreskin is circumcised, and she remains in the blood of her cleansing 33 days. She does not touch whatever is set apart, and she does not come into the set-apart place until the days of her cleansing are completed. But if she gives birth to a female child, then she shall be unclean for 2 weeks, as in her monthly separation, and she remains in the blood of her cleansing for 66 days. And when the days of her cleansing are completed, for a son or for a daughter, she brings to the priest a lamb, a year old, as an ascending offering, and a young pigeon or a turtle dove, as a sin offering, to the door of the tent of appointment. And he shall bring it before Yahweh and make an atonement for her, and she shall be cleansed from the flow of her blood. This is the Torah for her who has given birth to a male or a female. And if she is not able to bring a lamb, then she shall bring 2 turtle doves or 2 young pigeons, one as an ascending offering, and the other as a sin offering, and the priest shall make an atonement for her, and she shall be clean. And Yahweh spoke to Moshe and to Aharon, saying, When a man has on the skin of his body a swelling, a scab, or a bright spot, and it shall become on the skin of his body like a leprous infection, then he shall be brought to Aharon the priest, or to one of his sons the priests. And the priest shall look at the infection on the skin of the body, and if the hair on the infection has turned white, and the infection appears to be deeper than the skin of his body, it is a leprous infection. And the priest shall look at him and pronounce him unclean. And if the bright spot is white on the skin of the body, and does not appear to be deeper than the skin, and its hair has not turned white, then the priest shall shut up the infected one 7 days. And the priest shall look at him on the 7th day, and see if the infection appears to be as it was. And if the infection has not spread on the skin, then the priest shall shut him up another 7 days. And the priest shall look at him again on the 7th day and see if the infection has darkened. And if the infection has not spread on the skin, then the priest shall pronounce him clean. It is a scab, and he shall wash his garments and be clean. But if the scab spreads further over the skin, after he has been seen by the priest for his cleansing, he shall be seen by the priest again, and the priest shall look and see. If the scab has spread on the skin, then the priest shall pronounce him unclean. It is leprosy. When the infection of leprosy is on a man, then he shall be brought to the priest, and the priest shall look and see if the swelling on the skin is white, and it has turned the hair white, and there is a spot of raw flesh in the swelling. It is an old leprosy on the skin of his body, and the priest shall pronounce him unclean. He does not shut him up, for he is unclean. And if leprosy breaks out all over the skin, then the leprosy shall cover all the skin of the infected one, from his head to his foot, wherever the priest looks. Then the priest shall look and see if the leprosy has covered all his body. He shall pronounce the infected one clean. It has all turned white, he is clean. But the day raw flesh appears on him, he is unclean. And the priest shall look at the raw flesh and pronounce him to be unclean. The raw flesh is unclean, it is leprosy. Or when the raw flesh changes and turns white again, he shall come to the priest, and the priest shall look at him and see if the infection has turned white. Then the priest shall pronounce the infected one clean. He is clean. And when the body has a boil in the skin, and it is healed, and in the place of the boil there comes a white swelling or a bright spot, reddish white, then it shall be seen by the priest, and the priest shall look and see if it appears deeper than the skin, and its hair has turned white. The priest shall pronounce him unclean. It is a leprous infection which has broken out of the boil. But if the priest looks at it and sees no white hairs in it, and it is not deeper than the skin, but has faded, then the priest shall shut him up 7 days. And if it has spread further over the skin, then the priest shall pronounce him unclean. It is a leprous infection. But if the bright spot stays in place, it is not spread, it is the scar of a boil, and the priest shall pronounce him clean. Or when the body receives a burn on the skin by fire, and the raw flesh of the burn shall become a bright spot, reddish white or white, then the priest shall look at it and see if the hair of the bright spot has turned white, and it appears deeper than the skin. It is leprosy broken out in the burn, and the priest shall pronounce him unclean. It is a leprous infection. But if the priest looks at it and sees there are no white hairs in the bright spot, and it is not deeper than the skin, but has faded, then the priest shall shut him up 7 days. And the priest shall look at him on the 7th day. If it spreads further over the skin, then the priest shall pronounce him unclean. It is a leprous infection. But if the bright spot stays in its place and has not spread on the skin, but has faded, it is a swelling from the burn, and the priest shall pronounce him clean, for it is the scar from the burn. And when a man or a woman has an infection on the head or in the beard, then the priest shall look at the infection and see if it appears deeper than the skin, and there is a thin yellow hair in it. Then the priest shall pronounce him unclean. It is an eruption, a leprosy of the head or beard. But when the priest looks at the infection of the eruption and sees that it does not appear deeper than the skin, and there is no black hair in it, then the priest shall shut up the one with the infection of the eruption 7 days. And on the 7th day the priest shall look at the infection and see if the eruption has not spread. And if there is no yellow hair in it, and the eruption does not appear deeper than the skin, then he shall shave himself, but the eruption he does not shave. And the priest shall shut up the one with the eruption another 7 days. And on the 7th day the priest shall look at the eruption and see if the eruption is not spread over the skin, and does not appear deeper than the skin. Then the priest shall pronounce him clean, and he shall wash his garments, and he shall be clean. But if the eruption spreads further over the skin after his cleansing, then the priest shall look at him and see if the eruption has spread over the skin. The priest need not seek for yellow hair. He is unclean. But if the eruption appears to have stayed, and there is black hair grown up in it, the eruption has healed. He is clean, and the priest shall pronounce him clean. And when a man or a woman has bright spots on the skin of the body, white bright spots, then the priest shall look and see. If the bright spots on the skin of the body are dull white, it is a white spot that grows on the skin. He is clean. And when a man loses the hair of his head, he is bald, he is clean. And if the hair has fallen from his forehead, he is bald on the forehead, he is clean. And when there is on the bald head or bald forehead a reddish white infection in it, it is leprosy breaking out on his bald head or his bald forehead. And the priest shall look at it and see if the swelling on the infection is reddish white on his bald head or on his bald forehead, as the appearance of leprosy on the skin of the body. He is a leprous man, he is unclean. The priest shall pronounce him unclean without fail. His infection is on his head. As for the leper who has the infection, his garments are torn, and his head is uncovered, and he has to cover his upper lip and cry, "Unclean, unclean." He is unclean all the days he has the infection. He is unclean. He is unclean, and he dwells alone. His dwelling place is outside the camp. And when a garment has an infection of leprosy in it, in a woolen garment or in a linen garment, or in the wrap or in the weft of a linen or wool, or in leather or in any leather work, and the infection shall be greenish, reddish in the garment or in the leather or in the wrap or in the weft or in any leather object, it is an infection of leprosy, and shall be shown to the priest. And the priest shall look at the infection and shut up the infected one 7 days. And he shall look at the infection on the 7th day. And when the infection has spread in the garment or in the warp or in the weft or in the leather or any leather work, the infection is an active leprosy, it is unclean. And he shall burn that garment or the warp or the weft in wool or in linen or any leather object in which the infection is, for it is an active leprosy, it is burned with fire. But if the priest looks and sees that the infection is not spread in the garment or in the warp or in the weft or in any leather object, then the priest shall give command, and they shall wash that in which the infection is, and he shall shut it up another 7 days. And the priest shall look at the infection after it has been washed and see if the infection has not changed its appearance, though the infection has not spread, it is unclean, and burn it in the fire. It is eaten away in its inside or outside. And if the priest shall look and see that the infection has faded after washing it, then he shall tear it out of the garment, or out of the warp, or out of the weft, or out of the leather. And if it is still seen in the garment, or in the warp, or in the weft, or in any leather object, it is a spreading infection. Burn it with fire, that in which the infection is. And if you wash the garment, or the warp, or the weft, or any leather object, if the infection has disappeared from it, then it shall be washed a second time, and shall be clean. This is the Torah of the infection of leprosy in a garment, or wool, or linen, or in the warp, or in the weft, or in any leather object, to pronounce it clean, or pronounce it unclean.
Wow, good job. All right. All right, he who blessed our fathers, Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, may he bless man who's come up to honor Yahweh in the Torah. May the set apart one bless him and his family, and send blessing and prosperity in all the works of his hands. Amen. Okay, Manny's going to read chapter 14.
Chapter 14. Thank you, sir. Oh, that's a long one. And Yahweh spoke. No, I'm just kidding. Sorry, inside joke. And Yahweh spoke to Moshe, saying, "This shall be the Torah of the leper of the day of his cleansing. He shall be brought to the priest, and the priest shall go out of the camp, and the priest shall look and see if the leprosy is healed in the leper. And the priest shall command, he shall take for him who is cleansed to live and clean birds and cedar wood and scarlet and hyssop And the priest shall command, and he shall slay one of the birds in an earthen vessel over running water. Let him take the live bird and the cedar wood and the scarlet and the hyssop and dip them in the live bird in the blood of the bird that was slain over the running water. And he shall sprinkle it 7 times on him who is to be cleansed from leprosy, and shall pronounce him clean, and shall let the live bird loose in the open field. And he who is to be cleansed shall wash his garments, and shall shave off all his hair, and wash himself in the water, and shall be clean. Then after he comes into the camp, but shall stay outside his tent 7 days. And on the 7th day it shall be that he shaves all his hair off his head, and his beard, and his eyebrows, and even all the hair he shaves off, and he washes his garments, and wash his body in water, and shall be clean. And on the 8th day he takes 2 male lambs, perfect ones, and the ewe, a lamb a year old, a perfect one, and 3/10 of an ephah of fine flour mixed with oil grain as a grain offering, and 1 log of oil. And the priest who is cleansing shall present the man who is to be cleansed with these offerings before Yahweh at the door of the tent of appointment. And the priest shall take 1 male lamb and bring it as a guilt offering, and the log of oil, and wave them as a wave offering before Yahweh. And he shall slay the lamb in the place where he slays the sin offering and the ascending offering in the set-apart place. For the guilt offering is like a sin offering, belongs to the priest. It is most set apart. And the priest shall take some of the blood from the guilt offering, and the priest shall put it on the tip of the right ear of him who is to be cleansed, on the thumb of his right hand, and on the big toe of his right foot. And the priest shall take some of the log oil and pour it onto the palm of his own left hand. And the priest shall dip his right finger in the oil that is in his left hand, and shall sprinkle some of the oil with his finger 7 times before Yahweh. And the rest of the oil in his hand, the priest puts some of it on the tip of his right ear of him who is to be cleansed, on the thumb of his right hand, on the big toe of his right foot, on the blood of the guilt offering. And the rest of the oil that is in the priest's hand he puts on the head of him who is to be cleansed, and the priest shall make atonement before him. And the priest shall make the sin offering and make atonement for him who is to be cleansed from his uncleanness. Then afterwards he slays the ascending offering, and the priest shall offer the ascending offering and the grain offering on the slaughter place. And the priest shall make atonement for him, and he shall be clean. But if he is poor and unable to afford it, then he shall take 1 male lamb as a guilt offering to be waved, to make atonement for him, and 1/10 of an ephah of fine flour mixed with oil as a grain offering, and a log of oil, and 2 turtle doves or 2 young pigeons, and he is as such as he is able to afford. 1 shall be a sin offering, and the other an ascending offering. And he shall bring them to the priest on the 8th day for his cleansing, to the door of the tent of appointment before Yahweh. And the priest shall take the lamb of the guilt offering and the log of oil, and the priest shall wave them as a wave offering before Yahweh. And he shall slay the lamb of guilt offering, and the priest shall take some of the blood of the guilt offering and put it on the tip of the right ear of him who is to be cleansed, and on the thumb of his right hand, and on the big toe of his right foot. Then the priest pours some of the oil into the palm of his own left hand, and the priest shall sprinkle with his right finger some of the oil that is left in his hand 7 times before Yahweh. And the priest shall put some of the oil that is in his hand on the tip of the right ear of him who is to be cleansed, and on the thumb of the right hand, and on the big toe of his right foot, and on the place of the blood of the guilt offering. And the rest of the oil that is in the priest's hand he puts on the head of him who is to be cleansed, to make atonement for him before Yahweh. And he shall prepare 1 of the turtle doves or young pigeons, such as he is able to afford, that which he is able to afford, the one as a sin offering and the other as an ascending offering, with the grain offering. And the priest shall make atonement for him who is to be cleansed before Yahweh. This is the Torah for one who had an infection of leprosy, who was unable to afford for his cleansing. And Yahweh spoke to Moshe and to Aaron, saying, when you come into the land of Canaan, which I am giving you as a possession, I put a plague of leprosy in a house in the land of your possession. Then the one who owns the house come and inform the priest, saying, it seems to me that there is some plague in the house. And the priest shall command they shall empty the house before the priest goes in to look at the plague, so that all is in the house is not made unclean. And after the priest goes in to look at the house, and he shall look at the plague and see if the plague is on the walls of the house with sunken places, greenish or reddish, which appear to be deep in the wall. Then the priest shall go out of the house to the door of the house and shut up the house for 7 days. And the priest shall come again on the 7th day and look and see if the plague has spread on the walls of the house. Then the priest shall command, and they shall remove the stones with the plague in them, and they shall throw them outside the city into an unclean place. While he lets the house be scraped inside, all around, all the dust that they scrape off, they shall pour out in an unclean place outside the city. And they shall take other stones and put them in place of those stones, and take other mortar and plaster the house. And if the plague comes back and breaks out in the house after he has removed the stones, after he has scraped the house and after it is plastered, then the priest shall come and look and see if the plague has spread in the house. It is an active leprosy in the house, it is unclean. And he shall break down the house, its stones and its timber, and all its plaster of the house, and he shall bring them outside the city to an unclean place. And he who goes into the house all the days while it is shut up becomes unclean until evening. And he who lies down in the house has to wash his garments, and he who eats in the house has to wash his garments. However, if the priest indeed comes and looks at it and sees that the plague is not spread in the house after the house was plastered, then the priest shall pronounce the house clean, because the plague is healed. And to cleanse the house he shall take 2 birds and cedar wood and scarlet and hyssop. And he shall slay one of the birds in an earthen vessel over running water. And he shall take the cedar wood and the hyssop and the scarlet and the live bird, and dip them in the blood of the slain bird and in the running water, and shall sprinkle the house 7 times. He shall thus cleanse the house with the blood of the bird and running water, and the live bird, and with the cedar wood, and with the hyssop, and with the scarlet. And he shall let the live bird loose outside the city in an open field, and shall make atonement for the house. It shall be clean. This is the Torah for any infection of leprosy and eruption, and for leprosy of a garment and of a house, and for the swelling, and for the scab, and for a bright spot, to teach when it is unclean and when it is clean. This is the Torah of leprosy.
All right, thank you, Manny, and thank you, Brianna. I'll read the last chapter here. Okay, chapter 15. And Yahweh spoke to Moshe and to Aaron, saying, Speak to the children of Israel, and say to them, when any man has a discharge from his flesh, his discharge is unclean. And this is his uncleanness in regard to his discharge, whether his flesh runs with his discharge, or his flesh is stopped up by his discharge, it is his uncleanness. Any bed becomes unclean on which he who has the discharge lies, and any object on which he sits becomes unclean. And anyone who touches his bed has to wash his garments, and shall bathe in water, and be unclean until evening. And he who sits on any object on which he who has the discharge sat has to wash his garments, and shall bathe in water, and be unclean until evening. And he who touches the flesh of him who has the discharge has to wash his garments, and shall bathe in water, and shall be unclean until evening. And when he who has the discharge spits on him who is clean, then he shall wash his garments, and shall bathe in water, and be unclean until evening. Any saddle on which he who has the discharge rides becomes unclean. And whoever touches any of that which was under him is unclean until evening. And he who is carrying them up has to wash his garments, and shall bathe in water, and be unclean until evening. And anyone whom he has the discharge touches, without rinsing his hands in water, shall wash his garments, and bathe in water, and be unclean until evening. And the earthen vessel which he who has the discharge touches has to be broken, and every wooden vessel has to be rinsed in water. And when he who has a discharge is cleansed of his discharge, then he shall count for himself 7 days. for his cleansing, and shall wash his garments, and shall bathe his flesh in running water, and be clean. And on the 8th day he takes for himself 2 turtle doves and 2 young pigeons, and shall come before Yahweh to the door of the tent of meeting, and shall give them to the priest. And the priest shall prepare them, the one as a sin offering, and the other as a burnt offering. And the priest shall make atonement for him before Yahweh because of his discharge. And when a man has an emission of semen, then he shall wash all his flesh in water, and be unclean until evening. And any garment or any leather on which there is semen shall also be washed with water, and be unclean until evening. And when a woman lies with a man, and there is an emission of semen, they both shall bathe in water, and be unclean until evening. And when a woman has a discharge, and the discharge from her flesh is blood, she has to be in her separation for 7 days, and whoever touches her is unclean until evening. And whatever she lies on during her separation is unclean, and whatever she sits on is unclean. And anyone who touches her bed has to wash his garments, and shall bathe in water, and be unclean until evening. And whoever touches any object that she sat on has to wash his garments, and shall bathe in water, and be unclean until evening. And if it is on the bed, or on any object on which he sits, when he touches it, he is unclean until evening. And if any man lies with her at all, and her monthly flow is on him, he shall be unclean 7 days. And any bed he lies on is unclean. And when a woman has a discharge of blood for many days, other than at the time of her monthly separation, or when she discharges beyond her usual time of monthly separation, all the days of her unclean discharge shall be as the days of her monthly separation. She is unclean. Any bed on which she lies all the days of her discharge is to her as the bed of her monthly separation. And whatever she sits on is unclean, and the uncleanness of her monthly separation, as the uncleanness of her monthly separation. And anyone who touches them is unclean, and shall wash his garments, and shall bathe in water, and be unclean until evening. But if she is cleansed of her discharge, then she shall count for herself 7 days, and after that she is clean. And on the 8th day she takes for herself 2 turtle doves, or 2 young pigeons, and shall bring them to the priest to the door of the tent of meeting. And the priest shall prepare the one as a sin offering, and the other as a burnt offering. And the priest shall make atonement for her before Yahweh for the discharge of her uncleanness. Thus you shall separate for the children of Israel from their uncleanness, lest they die in their uncleanness when they defile my dwelling place, which is in their midst. This is the Torah for one who has a discharge, and for him who emits semen and is unclean thereby, and for her who is sick in her monthly separation, and for one who has a discharge, either man or woman, and for him who lies with an unclean woman. Amen. Amen. Okay, that's going to complete the Torah readings for today. Again, I want to thank the readers, Manny and Brianna, good job. Closing blessing. Baruch atah Yahweh Eloheinu melech haolam asher natan lanu Torat emet v'chayei olam nata b'tochenu. Baruch atah Yahweh noten haTorah. Amen. Blessed are you, Yahweh Elohim, King of the universe, who has given us a Torah of truth and has planted eternal life in our midst. Blessed are you, Yahweh, giver of the Torah. Amen. Amen. All right. This I know is everybody's favorite Torah portion. I mean, there's nothing going on in here that would make anybody go, ugh. But you know what? This goes to show you that Yahweh wants us to know how to handle everything that can come up. Or in this case, get on us or come out of us or whatever. But he wants us to know what to do when these things happen. And it's all about, just so we're clear before we get into the discussion and everything, it's all about coming into his dwelling place and not defiling his dwelling place. So these laws, these regulations have to do with what's called tahor and tameh, which is your state of ritual cleanliness in terms of your interacting with going into the tabernacle. It is not about showing up at the synagogue or at, as we used to say in New York, and going to shul or coming to the congregation, okay? Although the Orthodox will treat it that way, because it's about being in that one place where his physical presence was. His presence was over the mercy seat in that building. And you could not come into that building and do the things there to come that close to his presence, to interact with his presence. Now, I know the high priest was the only one who actually went into that space, but still, remember, he's fulfilling that dwelling place to a certain degree. And you could not come into that building in those circumstances. Okay, and I'm sure we'll talk about this a lot more as we discuss this. So let me just go over some announcements real quickly before we do that. Okay? So first, I do want to welcome any guests that we have online. I know we have a few hundred computers on there. How much? 261, so we got over almost 300 computers on there. So some of you may be new. We want to welcome you. If you're, of course, a regular attendee, we want you to feel welcome as always. We appreciate you coming each week or when you can. All right, so first and foremost, let's deal with the Omer count. What day are we on in the Omer count? When? No, it's past 12. It's after dark. 13, okay? So it was 12 going into 13 when we started, but it's now 13 as we finished our reading. So it's day 13. Okay, so if you're going through the Omer count challenge, okay, you're on the 13th item on the challenge, which is going to be one of the fruit of the Spirit. So which one is the 13th one? Peace, which actually is also the name of the teaching that we're dealing with, like peace in a world not his. So love, joy, peace. So we're up to the third one because we did the 10 Commandments first. And so that list of the Omer count challenge is found on the MTOI website. You can find it right there on the home page where the Omer count is listed. If you click on that little banner, it will take you to the sheet that says the items that we're up to based on what day we're up to, okay? So day 13, we're up to peace. All right, so we do this every Tuesday. So for all of you that are coming every Tuesday, we do this every Tuesday. And so you're welcome to come, 8 o'clock Eastern time every Tuesday. We do have a youth program for the children. It's called Parsha Pearls. You can find that on the ymtoi.org website, ymtoi.org website. It's a free program, very robust, full of tremendous information for the children to engage with the material of the Torah portions. And please go check it out there. We are not producing, well, we will for the next couple of weeks be producing a few more new ones where we're doing some edits and doing the things like that. And then we're going to be taking a short break as we rearrange a few things. But we will still be putting them on the website as we can here. And expect also a special Shavuot edition as we get closer to Shavuot. Okay. By the way, when we did day 13, we should have said that it's what? 37 days until Shavuot has fully come. Okay, so we're anticipating Shavuot coming. All right, now, of course, we meet every Shabbat. We live stream that as well. So if you're new online here watching this Torah portion, this Torah study, we do live stream our Shabbat services. You're always welcome to attend that as well. That's at 1:15 Eastern time on Shabbat. Okay, the stream will start at about 1. We will go live at about 1:15. And then so you could be there for that. That's when the praise music will start. Okay. This coming Shabbat, okay, on the 25th. This coming Shabbat is also Rosh Chodesh for ER, the next month. So we're starting to really go through the holy day counts towards the fall feast now. So we're going to finish the spring feast as we're into ER, then we're going to get into Sivan, and then we're going to have the, Shavuot celebration as we work our way around the calendar. Okay, so we're going to do the Rosh Chodesh service on this Shabbat at the end of our regular Shabbat service. So about 5 o'clock Eastern time, you can just log in, and if you didn't get to do it earlier during the service, if you want to enjoy the Rosh Chodesh service. The Rosh Chodesh service is actually very short. Okay, so, but you can log in for that. We should be doing that around 5 o'clock as best I can work out. Now, so I think that will cover that. Now, Shavuot is on, I don't know if we have a Shavuot slide. If we don't have a Shavuot slide, it's okay. It's on Friday, May 29th. Okay? So that'll be on May the 29th. That'll be Shavuot. And we'll have services here at 1:15. So we'll be live streaming at 1:15. I'm hoping by then we'll actually have a room full of people. Okay? I mean, I don't see any reason why that would not be the case, but we're not there yet. All right? All right, so that's going to cover it for that. Okay, so Marty, I was just saying, so we can start putting a Shavuot slide up in the next series of slides starting for Shabbat. Okay, that'll be for May the 29th. All right. Excuse me. All right, so that covers it for the announcements. Let me just remind everyone, because we have about double the amount of computers on now than there were before when I first announced this. Yes, parts of the country are coming out of the stay-at-home orders. Yes, they are starting to, quote unquote, open up the country mostly around May 1st. Nobody's really doing it before that, and some maybe by the 27th, okay, which would be on Friday. No, excuse me, on Monday, right? It's because Saturday's the 25th. So some of them will be starting on Monday because I guess they just want to start what they think is the beginning of a work week. But by the 1st, a lot of places will be doing something. We just don't know what that something is very clearly. Each state's going to be a little bit different how they're rolling that out and how they're going to handle things. Our governor here, Governor Bill Lee, has tended to go with the White House and CDC guidelines. He has put some executive orders out there enforcing some of those things. And so my guess at this point is that we still will not be able to just go ahead and start having services, but that he's going to be opening up more businesses to go to and to interact as far as your vendors. So you'll now be able to go to get a haircut or, go to, the department stores probably and buy clothing, whatever it is that you want to do. So they may start opening up some of the other stores and other businesses to get industry going again, but I don't think they're going to be changing the social aspect of it yet. Okay? And so for those of you that are going to listen to the rhetoric that's going on Facebook and the rhetoric that's going on the cable channels and TV, etc., bear in mind until I announce it, we're still closed here. Okay? We only have people here that are manning the cameras and the computers and the sound booth. Okay? So we don't have people attending anything yet. I will announce prior to when that can work out. I'll either put it on our Facebook page, so all of you should be on the MTOI Facebook group page, okay, or at least be able to go find it. Even if you're not on the page, you should be able to look at it, all right? We don't just take everybody into the group. We're going to ask you to identify how you know us and where you're from. We don't need a lot of people just posting things on the group just to post. It's not an open forum type group. It's a place where people in our group can essentially ask the leadership questions and stuff. And we also post nice things like Shabbat Shaloms and that kind of thing. But I will post it on the MTOI group or have Manny do it when we are opening up, or I'll announce it. Like if we were doing it this Saturday, I'll be announcing it tonight. We're not doing it this Saturday, so I'm not announcing it tonight, okay? Now, we won't really know what this looks like until we get there. In other words, we'll have to see how the governments react when they actually start unwinding this lockdown. They may unwind it a little bit. There may be a little jump in numbers, and they may panic and lock it down again. Who knows what they're going to do? We have to just wait and be patient. That's the main point, okay? And respect the authority of the leadership in making that call. And so that's my judgment and my call to make, so please be patient with that, all right? Okay. Abba is watching how we handle that, how we handle respect for the leadership here as well as the leadership in the local governments and the state governments and the federal. I mean, he watches how we handle leadership. Okay? All right. Now, I think that's going to cover it for that. I think that handles what I wanted to say as far as that is concerned. Okay, so the discussion portion, we're going to get into that now. So if you have taken notes, and if you're online, you should be typing that stuff in now for Manny. You getting some of those already? Good. Okay, because some of the people on there know it's time to hurry up and get those in. Okay, so if you have comments or questions. So in these chapters here, chapters 12 through 15, and as always, my guidance for this is that we try to go at least as best we can somewhat chronologically, as well as if we can, while we're doing it, look for what, if anything, applies to us or what we can glean out of it to learn from and apply to our walk. Because after all, this stuff is here, at least as Rav Shaul, the Apostle Paul, has said, it's here to edify us, to be examples so that we can know what to do and what not to do. So now we are dealing with some very interesting things here. We're dealing with this skin condition called sara'at. We're dealing with emissions and things that are like that nature. I just want us to understand, you have to realize as you're reading all this, because it may sound like we're talking about some major rituals going on here, and some of them are. I mean, you're going to have to do these offerings. Those are rituals that we have to go through with the temple and the priests, etc. But some of this is because, are you ready for this? They didn't have showers. They didn't have baths. People did not, I know this is going to sound bizarre and smelly, but people didn't wash all the time. They just didn't. It wasn't convenient. There wasn't always water to get access to. And so these things were mostly used for the ritual cleansings that were necessary. And so while you may think it obvious that if any of these things were to happen, that you would wash your clothing if it got any on there, or you would wash yourself. They needed instruction for this. They needed guidance because they did not have the availability of the plumbing that we have access to and the water that's abundantly available in every house. And so this is an important thing. So he was telling them, whether you clean yourself or not, when this happens, you must clean yourself. You'll still be unclean until evening, and these things will have to go on, but you're going to have to wash your clothes, anything you touched, etc. Okay, this is important as we kind of go through this. I'm going to preemptively kind of hit a few things. So we're talking about, does anybody remember, I don't know, somebody named, Rachel. And she had taken her father's idols, and when her father showed up to search the camp for them, what was she doing? Sitting on them. And what did she say to him? I'm sorry, but I can't get up because I'm in the way of women. And here it tells you he didn't want to go anywhere near that because it would make him unclean in some way, whatever his belief system was. But he knew that there was an understanding that you didn't want to get involved with all that. Of course, I think that it's kind of appropriate that she was sitting on unclean idols and making them unclean, if that were really the case, which she wasn't. She was just lying to him, but still, So you can see some of the things in other stories play out here so you can understand them a little bit. We also see in Matthew and in Luke, etc., you see a couple of places where Yeshua heals a leper, or in one case, 10 of them, and only one comes back. But what does he say in every one of those cases? He says, go show yourself to the priest and make the offering required by Moshe. So here Yeshua himself, I know all the Christians are going to say, well, that's before he died. Okay, whatever. All right? But he told them to do what Moses said as far as offerings. He sent them to the temple and to the priests. And he never changes on that anywhere along the line and says, okay, now that I'm dying, because he came back and he spoke to them and he walked with them and he appeared to them, and he never said, well, now that I'm back, you don't have to do all that temple stuff. There's not one verse that says that. Be nice if it did for all the people that believe that way, wouldn't it? But it's not there because it's not true. He didn't do anything to remove all of that. And I promise you, everybody of his disciples still went to the temple as required for all the things that it was required for until there was no temple 40 years later. That's a long time for them all to still go to the temple. Now, some of them didn't because they got martyred before that was 40 years. But I mean, they all of his followers still went to the temple as required for the various reasons until it was destroyed in 70. And so what you're learning here is that things that have to do with either sin or death, okay? So leprosy or the sara'at is a thing that looks like rotting, something that rots, and it's a terrible thing in the skin. It can get on your clothing. Warp and weft has to do with, if you're a weaver, you would understand how the strands of the cloth would go, and then how you would weave in between that, and that's what you have is your warp and your weft, okay? So in other words, it would be in the weave of the cloth. And so the instructions want to help guide us as to what to do when that uncleanness comes. Now, when you do the study, you'll find out that this is not the normal understanding of leprosy, that sara'at is dealing with something a little bit differently. And it seems like, because it then appears on the house, that this is something that has to do more with sin, and that Abba's trying to get the attention of the person, saying, look, you're doing something you shouldn't do, so I'm going to manifest it on you. In other words, when you first start doing something you shouldn't do, who does it affect? You. It also could affect others. So it gets more visible as the more it becomes an affected thing. So now it's appearing on your clothing. Because when this appears on your skin, you could cover that up. When it's now on your clothing, you can't cover that up. It's actually on your outside. And then when it's actually on the walls of your house, now everybody can really see it. And so we can take a spiritual lesson out of this, just understanding that whatever you do, he sees it for sure, and others probably see it as well or will. You can't hide things forever. They will find out. People will find out. He'll definitely know already. You want to cheat on your spouse? She'll find out. He'll find out, I promise you. Why? Why? Because you'll act differently. And they'll notice that you're acting differently. And they'll wonder, why are you acting differently? And so this is a great metaphor for that sort of process. You know? You are doing something and you think, well, it only affects me. And only I know about it. Well, but then now it becomes more visible. And others will now know about it. And then it also starts to affect your whole household. That's the idea of it being on the walls of your house. Because what you're doing can bring a problem to the whole family, to the whole house. All right? There's the idea of being unclean by contact. So you come into contact with. And by the way, this is not only direct contact. If I come into contact with something that you touched, there's still a transference of that uncleanness. So think about that from a spiritual point of view. Okay? If I come into contact with an idea that you started putting out there, a thought, a mindset that are all wrong, I could be influenced by them by having made contact with it, even if I didn't make direct contact with it. Because what if, I'll just look at the room here, what if George had shared that with Manny? Something, whatever, or vice versa. And then I actually come into contact with Manny, but it was George's thing, but now I'm coming into contact indirectly because it will spread. It talks about spreading. You know, this is kind of an appropriate thing to deal with to a certain degree with this COVID-19, and everybody's worried about spreading this disease. But this is more of a spiritual problem. This is more of a spiritual problem. And so let's look at it from that point of view. Okay, I think that's probably as much as I want to cover before I have other stuff. The only other thing is people are going to probably ask about why the right thumb and right ear and big toe. I think Yahweh just wanted to be weird. I'm kidding. Okay? We've talked about this before in the anointing of the priests. Okay? The thumb of the right hand being the power or the strength. Okay? That represents what you do. Okay, so you have your right thumb. Okay, your ear represents what? The Shema, you're hearing and doing, right? So you got hearing and doing with the thumb and the ear. Am I hearing it? The right ear, the right thumb. I hear it. Am I doing it? And then the toe is what? Your walk. Am I walking it out? And so I think that it is appropriate that we deal with the ear, the thumb, and the big toe. Okay? All right, Manny, I stalled long enough.
Okay, thank you very much for that. All right, we'll start with Steve Waffle. He, I don't think this is necessarily a question, but he was just noticing chapter 12, and Yahweh spoke to Moshe, speak to the children. The father gave instructions to the leader, and the leader gave instructions thereafter.
Yes, and this is an important part of that. Look, I know we beat this to death every week because I think it's important, but I think you should be able to recognize that as life gets more challenging and the world does actually end up eventually into end times, it's going to be more and more needed that you find a vertical structure to help make the decisions that are necessary as to when we do and don't listen to who we do and don't listen to, as we may have to find ourselves challenged as maybe the world starts to clamp down on your Torah observance, which they might. There are some states saying they wanted to shut down all churches. In other words, all religious observances. Just like permanently, not just during this virus. After all, because, a synagogue in New York was one of the places where this thing first launched. Of course, I don't think the people in that synagogue literally went to all over the city and infected everybody as fast as that happened. There were obviously other people with it other places than in a small upstate town. But just recognize that there will be at some point an attack directly on those who are covenanted. And then you're going to need leadership to guide what we do next. What do we do now? How do we handle this? And so here you see how it works. And Yahweh speaks to Moses. And sometimes it's Yahweh speaks to Moses and Aaron. Okay, and so the leadership is getting direct interaction and then it's being disseminated. That does not change all of a sudden with the giving of the Ruach that we see in John 14. It doesn't change that. They had the Ruach here too. We know that from many, many things that we've studied. It's the way he does things. Okay, Manny?
Okay, Libby would like to know if this is the same skin condition Miriam got in Numbers 12:10.
I'd have to look at the Hebrew there, I'm not sure. Okay? That might have been just white leprosy, just a regular leprous, white as snow, etc.
Another comment from Steve Waffle. Why is it we still want to avoid proper alignment when it comes to receiving instructions? And he's putting just as a note, I see that chapter 13, 14, and 15 all start with, and Yahweh spoke to Moshe.
Look, there's lots of places consistently throughout Scripture where you start off with that because it's important that you know the source. Is it Moshe or is it Yahweh? And that's the key. You know, Yeshua makes this clear all the time. He says, this is from my Father. Everything I say is from my Father. I'm telling you the authority under which I'm giving you this information. So Moses says in the writings here, because remember, Moses is writing it down, where it says, and Yahweh spoke to Moshe saying. So Moses said, look, this is what Yahweh told me. It's not coming from me, it's coming from him. Now, they weren't standing there hearing the conversation because only he got to have those conversations, or he with Aaron could have those conversations. But then he said, look, this is on that authority. Now, here's the hard part for all of you. Same problem they had. Well, how do we know he really said it to you? Can you really trust your leadership? That is a challenge. And you'll see Israel has that challenge that, well, they've had it up to this point. They're going to have it again a whole bunch as we get into the book of Numbers. We see them struggle with it on a regular basis. They have a problem, believing that it's Yahweh that said it, not Moses. You almost have that really great scene with Edward G. Robinson in the Ten Commandments, Yeah, Moses, yeah. Did you just make this stuff up? Did you write those things up on the mountain, So you're going to take all this onto yourself? Ooh, you dirty rats. But you understand what I'm saying? I mean, that scene actually is, I think, legitimate to the mindset here that would come from time to time. How do we know we can believe you? Look, even his brother and sister started giving him some grief. And that's what we're talking about, where the leprosy happened to Miriam and, Aaron cries out, please, make that stop, etc. Yahweh takes how we deal with leadership really seriously. And by the way, the reverse of that is also true. For the leadership, he takes you very seriously in how you handle being in leadership. As a matter of fact, twice as much. Just remember that no matter what I say about leadership, I am fully, fearfully, in a right way, cognizant that I'm being held to a double judgment. And everybody in leadership should know that. They are being held to a potentially double judgment. And so, problem is, we've had a lot of people in leadership that had no thought whatsoever about any judgment. They just liked the power. They wanted the control. They wanted the authority. Okay? We had 4 hours on Sunday with the leadership, 4.5 hours. 20, almost, it was 19 or 20 people in the room, virtually on Zoom from around the world, trying to figure out what does Yahweh want us to do in working together to serve the body as effectively as possible, to help them in their transformation into the image of the Son and get them successfully into the kingdom. And when I say get them, I mean what tools, information, encouragements, etc. do we need to be putting out there? Because they're not going to be able to do anything for you physically, like to actually do the work for you. But what can I give you? And the leadership was wondering, what more can we possibly be doing to give you the necessary things that you would need to get there? For like 4 hours. And I had another almost 4-hour meeting today about that stuff with the staff here. Okay? Discussing what things can we do more? What more can we possibly do to empower, to give you the resources that you need to change? Because that's really what it's all about, isn't it? the internal and then external change that you go through as you transform into his image. That's the leadership mindset that needs to be had. And then, of course, we go and work our you-know-whats off, and we get disrespected, and nobody thinks that we're, you guys just want whatever. Oh, I've been accused of everything any other leader's been accused of. And if you're going to be in leadership, you'll be accused of it too. You power-hungry, megalomaniac, psychotic, blah, 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 control freak, something, whatever. Okay? It's going to happen. But you know what? I'm not afraid of what you say, but if he thinks I'm any of those things, I'm in big trouble. Do you understand? So I take very seriously those thoughts, and I want to make sure, am I doing those things? Because I've been accused of them all. Every leader gets accused of them all. You can't be in leadership and not be. Anytime as a leader you do something that's not what the people in the group that you're serving want you to do, think you should do, or whatever, you're going to have things accused of you. Especially if you somehow say no to them when they want a yes, or tell them they can't when they want to, or tell them they have to when they don't want to, or whatever it is. That is where, look, that's what you see happening with Korach. Korach is going to rebel. Why? Because he doesn't like the job he was given. And he's going to point all kinds of fingers. Hey, Moses, Aaron, nice racket you got going on over there. Everybody giving you all this stuff, and you guys all being in charge. And see, the accusations fly. Even though we know Moses was the humblest of men. Oh, but he's not accused of being humble. He's being accused of being some sort of, megalomaniac dictator who just wants all this power and authority and goods and wealth for himself. Because that's the way it appeared in the disgruntled mind of Korach. And this is what we get to read through. So just understand that you see those things going on here. So I like what Steve brought up. I think it was Steve Waffle brought it up, is that, there is a flow of this. This is really, I want to make sure this is clear. If you hear me and not him, then you shouldn't be listening to me. There's lots of people out there you can hear and you're listening to them. You got to find people that you listen to and you're hearing him, not them. Okay? If you're hearing me and not him, that's a problem. Now, by the way, if you're hearing me and not him because you're not hearing him, that may be your fault too. You may not be able to hear him because you're looking for what you're looking for. So if you don't like what you're hearing, you may want to first say, wait a minute, that might be him stepping on my toes, not Rabbi. Disturbing my peace, messing me up and getting me all upset. And as far as the warm fuzzies, do you think Moses gave out warm fuzzies on a regular basis? Do you think, even Shaul, do you think he really gave out a whole lot of warm fuzzies? He was pretty tough. Remember, he's the guy running around killing everybody because he thought they were blaspheming and heretics and whatever. You think Yahweh is always running around giving the warm fuzzies? Oh, he gives them plenty, but not always. There's times when he said, you worm, Yaakov, you maggot. Go read Isaiah 41 or 43, wherever that is. Okay? I got to look it up so I can tell you. It's 40. Oh, I'm in the wrong book. 41:14. All right? So there's some strong stuff. But I don't like the way you talk to me. Okay, sorry. And I am. I'm sorry if that hurt your feelings. I don't mean to hurt anybody's feelings. I'm imperfect. I'd love to only give you the warm fuzzies, except I don't know the warm fuzzies are going to get you where you need to go. And Yahweh doesn't say, well, if you don't figure this out, don't worry about it. We'll just weaken the system up and take things away and make it easier for you to do. And, don't worry about curses. There won't be any curses. And, we're going to change the curve. We'll just weaken the curve out. And everybody's going to just be fine. No, he says, look, if you don't obey, I'm going to curse you. If you can't figure that out, I'm going to curse you again and again 7 times more. because I'm not going to have this nonsense in my kingdom. You're going to learn to trust me. Well, we don't trust anybody very well. I got a lot of marriage counseling I do. You know what's the problem in most marriages? Trust. Husbands not trusting wives, wives not trusting husbands in their positions, etc. Very important. Okay. That was a lot for no reason to go in that direction, but look, I'm telling you, this is the biggest problem. That's why I talk about it every chance I get. And everybody's saying, oh, you just want people. It has nothing to do with how you treat me. I don't care. Okay? Wives, it's how you're treating your husbands. Husbands, it's how you're treating your wives. It's also husbands, how you need to be in line with some leadership. How dare you want your wife to submit to you and you're not submitting to anybody? I'm serious. Show me that in Scripture, that you don't have to do that. Maybe one of the reasons why they don't submit to you is because you don't submit to anybody. And you know what, guys? Some of you are submitted now under leadership, and your wives are ecstatic, and they're happy, and your marriages have improved and everything else because they see that you are submitted, that you know how to do what you're asking them to do. Why would you ask them to do something you're not doing? You're in the middle. Everybody's in the middle. That means you're submitted to something, meaning in the chain, someone you need to be submitted to, and you have a responsibility for somebody. Everybody but the Father is in the middle. I say this every week. How many of the men generally in our ministry are submitted in any official way where I would know that they're submitted? It would scare you, the percentage. Very small. Very small. Why? Pride, ego. That's what you see with Israel too, isn't it? Pride, ego, vanity. I don't want, I this, I that. I don't need anybody to tell me anything. Who put you in charge? You know what? You need to figure out who put me in charge and then have your problem with him. Okay? If it's me, well, then have a problem with me. If it's not me, then you're going to have a problem with the higher authority that put me here. If you think I built all this on my strength, my wisdom, my brilliance, my whatever, I can promise you and assure you that is just not the case. All right? All right, next question or comment.
Okay, next one is from Olivia and Janet Hoffman. Rabbi, I'm trying to connect chapter 13 and verse 7 to Matthew 8, 3 and 4 and Matthew 11, 5. When Yeshua cleansed the lepers, he was healing them from this spiritual disease and establishing his authority, correct?
Yes, and again, the main thing with those, and I don't know, Michael, I don't know if you have to change anything. I sat down, so I don't know if that changes the camera or whatever, but okay. But anyway, yes, the main point there is that he told them to do what Moses said. He actually sent them to the priest. So you see Yeshua, this goes into the what did Yeshua do? Well, he kept the Torah perfectly, and so he did not break anything. And so even when he healed, he said, well, this is something that when you get healed of it, you have to go to the priest. There's nothing in Scripture that says if you're crippled, you have to go show the priest. So he didn't send those guys to the priest when he healed the cripple. But when he healed the person with the tzara'at or the leprosy, he said, well, wait a minute, we have Scripture about that. The Torah says you got to go to the priest, and then you have to do an offering. Okay? And so that's the important piece there. So good connection. Okay, next.
Next one, Michelle Perez. Question 1, chapter 13:13. Is there a reason why when his body is covered from head to toe, he's clean?
Okay, again, this goes beyond our complete understanding because the details of these kind of skin diseases at the time, the difference being that there are certain things that would be considered more of a normal thing that would be happening for whatever degree. So that's why they're looking for, did it have a yellow hair? Did it have a black hair? Did it have this? Was it deeper than just the skin? These are all things that the priests were trained to understand and know what to do with. And thankfully, I'm not a priest, and we don't have a temple, and I don't have to do this. Because I don't know enough information. I mean, I would like to believe that they had a lot more detail than this, so it was very clear, because they understood what these things looked like. And so that they could examine it and identify. It's kind of like if you were to go to the doctor, you expect the doctor to tell you, do I have COVID-19? Do I just have the flu? Is it a common cold? Is it allergies? Like right now, I have some symptoms that I know are allergies. But when I first had allergies, it wasn't until I was in my early 30s, I thought I had a terrible flu. And so I did things you would do for a flu. It did nothing. Then someone said, no, that's allergies. I did something you do for allergies, and it worked. Because they can be similar in symptoms. So the expectation is that the priest, for whatever reason, would understand. Now, all of this stuff that you're reading here, you need not understand. Let me explain. None of this stuff was necessary for the person with the problem to understand it. Why? The only thing they needed to know was to go to the priest. The instruction here is then for the priest. If you see this, Mr. Priest, and you see this type of a blemish, and it's this way and it's that way, they're clean. If it's this way and it's that way, they're unclean. And then maybe it's not clear, and you need to watch it and see if it spreads more, if it does this, if it does that. So these are instructions for the priest. Remember, this is the book of Vayikra, the book of Leviticus. It's a book written to the priests on how to do their job. Okay? Now, some things it's important that we know, like, for example, the offering part. You would need to know that if he found you clean and you didn't have your 7 days to see that for sure that everything is good, on the 8th day, you know what to bring for an offering. See, that part we were supposed to know. So you had two jobs. Go to the priest, and then if it was going through this full process and you had to do the 7-week quarantine, so to speak, and then everything was okay, then you would need to make the offering. That was necessary. All right, go ahead.
Okay. Her next question had to do with 14. I'll probably save it to when I get to 14. Libby would like to know on Leviticus 13:45, they must cover their upper lips and call out, unclean, unclean. Did this have to do with Lashon Hara? Does this have a connection to Luke 12:3?
All right, hold on one second. Let me look at Luke 12:3. No, it doesn't have anything to do with that. Okay. Luke 12:3 says, and whatever you said in the dark shall be heard in the light, and whatever you spoke in the ear in the inner rooms, etc. No, it has nothing to do with that. Okay. I'll stand up again for a minute. All right, so when it talks about covering the upper lip, what is that? It's simply when you want to speak and be heard further, you tend to put your hand up by your mouth. So he's basically saying that you're shouting it and you're broadcasting. It's like a town crier. You're going to scream, unclean, unclean. Okay? It really isn't much different than that. I mean, you're going to go ahead and cover your mouth and you're louder. Okay, it helps bring the sounds like you're covering your upper lip and you're saying, unclean, unclean. You make a human megaphone. Let's not overcomplicate that. All right? Because people needed to know. Why? Because if you came into contact with that person or anything they touched, guess what you were? Unclean, unclean. Okay? You never thought of that, did you, Michael? You're like, no, I never thought of that. See? Cover the upper lip, and what are you doing? Unclean, unclean. Okay? I've never said that before, by the way, just so you know. Just read it today and I said, okay, that's pretty obvious. They're creating a megaphone thing. Unclean, unclean. Okay. What else?
All right. Next one is Adam had a question in Leviticus 14. The priest eating of the sacrifices is like a shadow of symbolism of Yeshua taking our sin upon himself at his crucifixion and eliminating it? Is that the gist of it?
Look, I understand the tendency to want to try to connect everything that happens to everything that Yeshua did, etc. And they're not always, direct connections there. Look, the priests were instructed, and we've read this in the previous chapters here in Leviticus, that with certain offerings, they got to eat the offering. Now, of course, there was part of it where there was, remember, some of these things it said would be a sin offering, some would be a burnt offering, and they had instructions on what to do with a sin offering and a burnt offering and who got to eat it. And it really had more to do with that. It's not connecting about eating the sin or whatever, I don't know, whatever else you were trying to say there. It's the mechanics of it here had to do with what's happening here. Okay? This isn't about the crucifixion. The priests here are not taking the sin upon themselves. Okay? If anything, when you are in sin, scripturally you confess them over the animal, and the animal is getting that. Okay? But I appreciate that, but just realize you've been taught, and not wrongly so necessarily, but sometimes to the obsession to try to figure out how every single thing that we read anywhere has to do with Yeshua in some manner. And it's not that that's not true. Almost everything does have to do with him. But as we struggle to try to connect things, we'll often wrongly connect them. Okay? Go ahead.
Okay, another one from Olivia and Janet Hoffman. Rabbi, were the Jewish laws of family purity developed out of chapter 15 any relevance for us today, as I know some rabbis emphasize this point, even as a health-related topic for women?
Okay, I'm really not sure the extent to where you wanted to go with that question. Look, and just also to answer the previous question more deeply, which I tend to do after thinking about it for a second while the next question is being read. Yeshua, when he wants us to connect something, you know what he does? He connects it. So like when we read about him healing the leper and telling him to go tell the priest, he's connecting this and that directly. Let's not necessarily have to go and stretch and find connections that he doesn't necessarily point out or don't see a connection to it. Okay, there are plenty of connections that he much more clearly points out that he wants you to make those connections. That'll keep you out of trouble. That's not to say that you'll always be wrong. I'm just saying, but you'll be wrong often enough and you can come to wrong conclusions and then you'll start attributing things incorrectly. Like all those people that believe that somehow he did away with the sacrifices because he was the fulfillment of all sacrifices. And that's just completely not true and had nothing to do with it. But you were told that for most of the last 2,000 years, so what else could you believe? Because somebody logically in their mind made that connection. But it's a wrong connection. All right? Okay, so then the questions about family purity, I'm assuming it's talking about some of the dealings with the women's cycle and the men's ejaculations and those kind of things and women's discharges and all that. Those are absolutely part of where, it's exactly where a lot of the Jewish Talmudic understanding of putting the fences around the fence, so to speak, to make sure that there are very specific rules about that stuff. Just remember this, the making you unclean is 100% linked to a temple interaction. Without the temple, it's not relevant, okay? Can you still practice it? Sure you can. We call these the laws of Nida, with the ladies, etc. But just recognize that this is not a problem in terms of when there's not a temple. As a matter of fact, in the Jewish community, I know the men are going to love this. In the Jewish community, it is a mitzvah. You know what a mitzvah is? Well, the mitzvot are commandments, but they call it a mitzvah, meaning doing a good deed. It is a good deed to have sexual interactions on Shabbat. This is a mitzvah. Why would it be a mitzvah? Because his very first commandments were to be fruitful and multiply. He wants a husband and wife to be achad. When are you most achad? When you come together in sexual relations. Now, I know I joke, but that doesn't mean you pull out the trampoline and the trapeze or any other crazy things, but you can come together, okay? You guys laugh, and I'm silly about that. But I mean, it's not about having sex. It's about having love between husband and wife and being echad. So in the Jewish community, that would mean that there would be an ejaculation, which would mean that they wouldn't be able to go to shul the next morning, because this would usually be on a Friday night. And so if they took it that way, but they don't take it that way, okay? So I'm only brought all that about to get to that last point, which is if they're doing that Friday night, how could they go to shul in the morning? How could they go to the congregation in the morning? They couldn't. But they don't understand it that way, okay? This is really about going into the temple. And he says very specifically in 15:31, Okay? He says, thus you shall separate the children of Israel from their uncleanness, lest they die in their uncleanness when they defile the Mishkan, my dwelling place. That's what all of this has been about for those 4 chapters, 12, 13, 14, 15. They want to make sure that you understand that this would cause a defiling of his place. We meet in this place. This isn't his place. Okay? His presence, we hope, will come and lead through the Ruach, but not the presence like you would have seen over the mercy seat. That Shekhinah would not be there. Okay, for those of you from the south, the Shekinah, okay, would not be there. If it was, we'd all be dead because we would be all unclean, according to the laws of Tameh and Tahor. That's why I laugh when all these churches claim that that presence has fallen in their church. And I say, no, it hasn't. So how do you know? Because you're not dead. I literally say that to them. And then they look at me crazy. I said, you clearly don't understand the laws of Tameh and Tahor. They go, the laws of what? You'd be dead. Oh, I've had people come into the congregation and tell me how you can't believe the things, Rabbi, that used to happen in my church and how the Shekinah glory would fall and all this other stuff. And I was like, didn't happen. What do you mean it didn't happen? They get all mad at me. Didn't happen. I don't know what happened, but I know what didn't happen. Because according to this book, you would be dead and everybody else in that congregation. There's not a human being alive right now that has done all the right rituals for that presence to be anywhere near you. So it didn't happen. And when I said that, and that first time I ever taught Tameh and Tahor, what state are you in, which was probably in 2000 or 2001, I made a lot of people mad at me. And you know what? The only reason why, you know why they were mad? Because it challenged their emotional things that were connected to those events in their previous life, their life in that church. Previous meaning not like past lives, but their previous journey when they were still going to those churches. How dare you invalidate what I experienced? And blah. I said, look, I'm just telling you what didn't happen. What happened, I don't know. I'm not saying it didn't happen. Whatever you felt, whatever happened, happened. I can just tell you it wasn't this, because you're still breathing. And you didn't tell me everybody died. But that's if you don't understand. This is why you see Nadab and Abihu get killed. Okay, we read that already, right, in these chapters. They go to bring strange fire. They go where they shouldn't go. They are unclean. They're doing what they shouldn't do, and they get zapped. This is why they tied a rope around the high priest when he went into the Holy of Holies, the highest place every year, because they wanted to say in case he dropped dead, they could pull him out. They weren't going to go in to get him. They knew better than to do that. And these little bells on his outfit there too to make sure they could hear him still walking around. Because if he was not fully tahor, doing all the things he was supposed to do, he wasn't coming out of that room. That's how serious this is. Okay? So, but to the family purity, yes, there are rules about how we do interact. Like you do not interact during the ladies' cycle. That's one of the things that you get to read. We don't do those kind of things. Why? Because Scripture says so. But I know a lot of people think, well, I'm seeking my pleasure if I'm doing those things on like a Friday night or on Saturday. Well, actually, that's his pleasure. He made you a sexual being, and that you were designed to do that in the covenantal, singular, unique relationship called marriage. It wasn't meant to ever be done outside of that. But inside of that structure, it is his pleasure. I mean, he didn't make it arduous and miserable. He made it joyful. He wants you to enjoy each other and be blessed in that union that he gives you, sure. Because I do get those questions, by the way. People will call me saying, is it okay? I don't know, my wife or my husband wanted to do this and I didn't know, blah, blah, blah. Absolutely. Okay? Just make sure it's lovemaking and not sex, if you understand what I'm saying. Look, we just talked about semen. I can certainly say that. Okay? Come together in a beautiful way as you were designed to be. Echad. All right? Okay. Now, by the way, do not use that as a license now to force the other spouse if they still feel uncomfortable with it. Oh, but Rabbi said, no, forget all that. I'm just telling you, if you both desire to do that, it's okay to do. I might even agree with the Jewish brothers who say it's a mitzvah. It's not required from Torah to do it. So don't use it as leverage over your spouse. Okay? I'm just telling you that there's nothing wrong with doing it. Okay. I know we laugh at all these topics, but you know what? This is the first year, because of the limited number of readers, that a woman didn't read that section. It always times out when we have multiple readers that a woman gets the one about the male genitalia getting mutilated, or this one about the semen, or it always ends up being that a woman reads these ones, and I feel bad every time that works out, but it always times out that way. So I'm glad it worked out. I got to read it, and it was a little different. Okay, next question.
Okay, next one. I think you'll be able to help this person. It's regarding kind of similar situations. 15:19, as well as 12:2 and 5, etc. Reading sections like this as a female is tough. They address normally bodily functions, things that were designed to occur, but it comes across as a woman. You are by default unclean by how you were made and not by your actions. This seems to equate being female with sin or some of the animals. Are there any such implications here? I've been struggling with this.
No, and I think I explained it, but I'll give more emphasis to it, so I appreciate you asking it anyway, even though I kind of already explained it. Look, this has nothing to do, any of this has nothing to do with the person. I'm not talking about the leprosy part. That may be sin problem, okay? The man's ejaculation, the woman's monthly discharges and stuff like that, okay? These things have nothing to do with your status as a human being. It has to do with being in a state called clean or unclean. You want to think of unclean meaning sinner versus righteous. That's not what it's talking about here. If you go outside and you work a hard day and you're sweating and you're doing all kinds of stuff and you get dirty and everything else, and you come home, guess what? You are unclean. And you'll need a shower, and your clothes will need to go in the laundry. That's the kind of level we're talking about here. Now, it goes stronger than that, because in that state, even though it's no fault of your own, if you come into the tabernacle, that's a problem. So it's not a judgment on the person doing what they do. If you were a farmer, I don't know how many people have ever farmed or worked with, the herd and being a shepherd, but those are hard, dirty, sweaty jobs. Okay, plowing and digging and planting and doing the stuff with the garden, or chasing the animals down and herding them and doing whatever you do with the animals. These are all hard work. This is not sitting behind a desk, answering a phone, or playing on a computer with your spreadsheets and whatever else you're doing. This is hard, sweaty work. See, we don't all work like that today. A lot of us do service industry stuff or techie stuff or whatever it is, and we don't do physical exertion like they did. But even then, you still get to the end of the day, and you may be thinking, don't come near me, I need to get in the shower first. We know enough to do that. Now, is that, so should the other person look at you like, oh, well, what's wrong with you? Are you sinful? Are you this? No, I'm sweated, and I'm had a long day, and I need a shower. And this may sound funny, but I mean, this is what we're talking about here. It's not, see, the ladies would like to think, oh, somehow they're trying to say that there's something wrong with us. No. If you have come into contact with anything of sin or death, your monthly cycle is a monthly death. There was a baby that could have been born. So it's related to death, blood and death. That's not your fault. You were designed that way. And he's simply saying, when you have those cycles, sort of wonderful and normal and the way you were designed, you are in a status that cannot go into the temple like that. And if anybody comes into contact with anything you touched, they might have gotten that same status. But it's a status of condition, of cleanliness, like hygiene. Think of it like a hygienic thing, not a spiritual thing. This is purely hygienic. That's why you have to wash the clothing, or you have to break the vessel, or you have to do whatever it is. It's a hygiene thing. But it's a hygiene thing related to the temple. You have to be a certain level hygienically to go into the temple. So I can see where the ladies could feel this way, but understand that this has nothing to do with you as a status as a human being. It doesn't diminish you in any way. It simply says that there's a hygienic issue because of that. Just like for the guys. And listen, ladies, you have that problem once a month. Guys could have their problem anytime. I mean, they could have the semen or whatever it is. I mean, that could happen daily, weekly. Whatever. I'm just saying that this is something that would make them unclean, though. It's a hygienic problem, though. It's not a sin issue. Okay? Maybe that would be a better way. I don't think I've explained it that way using that word, but I think I've explained it without using hygiene. But think of it as a hygiene issue. They didn't have the washing machines and the showers and the baths and the soaps and the shampoos and the stuff we have today to really pretty much scrub ourselves down pretty good after we come into contact with anything. And by the way, the same thing would happen if you touched a dead animal. The same thing all of these things would make you hygienically a problem to come into the cleanest of clean places, the temple. Okay? So good question. Please rest assured this does not in any way have anything to do to diminish your status as a woman, like somehow it's your fault. It's not your fault. He's simply saying as you go through these normal functions, that normal function is problematic for entering the temple while it's happening. And so to understand that. But same thing for the guys. All right? Same thing for the guys. That these things can be a challenge. Not a long-term challenge. Now, for the ladies, it's going to be the whole time you're in your cycle, plus the 7 days after. But for the guys, and for the ladies, when any of these other things, because it could be any kind of other discharge, whatever, it's basically unclean till evening. If you've done the things you need to do to wash, etc. And it says you will wash with water. In other words, it says, go take a bath. Now, they understand that to be the mikveh pool, which they use also for baptism and stuff like that. But it basically says, go take a bath. You need to wash. Okay? All right.
Man, that was beautifully said. That's amazing. Okay, next one from Evangeline. Can we assume that our physical body should be clean all the time as well as our spiritual temple? As said in 15:31, my dwelling place is in their midst.
Yep. Well, I mean, look, I know that it's, in 1 Corinthians we're told, do you not know that you're the dwelling place, etc. And so Paul uses the metaphor to tell us that it has to do also with keeping our own temples clean, etc. And please, if you haven't taken a shower on a regular basis, start taking one for the sake of everybody else. Okay? Especially, and I don't want to get in trouble with this, especially you teenagers, okay, who are not used to, I'm talking about the younger teenagers especially, who they're just transitioning into actually, because when you're little, you don't stink. Okay? You sweat and stuff, but the stink don't show up till later. But it comes and in strong. Okay? So be aware of that. Yes, so we do need to elevate our hygiene. Okay? Go ahead. Oh, but just to be clear, that doesn't mean that if you are in any of these states, you can't come here. I want to keep reminding you that. Because I know people will avoid coming here. They'll avoid going to services wherever because they think, well, I'm in that condition. It has nothing to do with that. This is a mishkan, dwelling place, tabernacle, whatever word you prefer for what was going on here. And that last place that place existed was in Jerusalem, and it's no longer, they destroyed it, okay, in 70. So we have not had this problem since 70 AD. All right? Or Common Era, because some people don't like using AD. That's sort of the Catholic way to do it. Okay, 70 CE. Go ahead.
Okay, wasn't sure.
Yeah.
Wasn't sure. I can never tell if you're thinking.
I'm not sure either.
So I always wait for you to tell me. Next question.
I don't know. Even when I do that, I still keep going. So
yeah, I know. All right, next one's from Rabbi Tom Mitchell. In light of what you said tonight, is it right for us to understand the Parshat Tazria is really about words, i.e. the words we speak and perhaps what we think as well?
I mean, you could probably take it in those directions too. I mean, these are things that could make you unclean. I mean, if we are using certain things. I mean, I think this is more, it could be those kind of things that make you get the sada'at in the first place. It could be more connected to. I know the Jewish communities have made those suppositions from time to time as like, what would cause you to get this particular thing? What kind of sin or inappropriate behavior would get this to happen? And so they often want to link things to our words. That's where you have things like Lashon Hara or the evil speech or evil tongues that would bring these kind of things. So we do not have a verse to tell us that overtly, so that's the problem. All right, next question.
I'm hoping you'll understand this question a little better. Christine wants to know, you mentioned the difference between interrupting these laws in accordance with the holy tent of appointment compared to our present-day synagogues. Would you be willing to expound on that in reference to which laws we should be keeping right now? I'm a little hazy in defining the differences.
Okay, so interrupt she meant to have interpret. Okay. Look, the bottom line is, and I think I've already explained it, so I guess mostly it's already been explained. This is not where his presence is. So all of the laws that have to do with temple and priest that you can't do, don't worry about them. You can't do them anyway. This one requires priests and the temple and offerings. Anything that you can do, you need to do. Okay? Okay.
Okay, thank you for that. Yaz Girl wants to know, is modern-day mold in the home considered infectious as leprosy as spoken in Leviticus?
Say it one more time. Is modern-day
mold as infectious, considered as infectious as leprosy?
It's a completely different situation. It's a big problem. I mean, mold is a real big problem, but, anybody can get mold in their house. Just leave it damp and you'll get mold. And it has nothing to do with how sinful you are or not sinful you are. If you leave your house damp, it will get mold. And so everybody and anybody can end up with mold. It's a completely different situation.
Okay.
Go ahead.
Okay. Olivia and Janet Hoffman. Was leprosy connected to evil speech, Lashon Hara, and rebelling against leadership, as we see an example with Miriam?
Well, I mean, that's one of the things that Rabbi Tom was bringing up, and I think the Jewish community does have a thought of that because of things like what happened to Miriam. It's not overtly said anywhere. So, yes, I'm sure it could have a linkage there, but we would not know. Again, not something you need to worry about. You shouldn't be speaking, in terms of Lashon Hara anyway, and maybe I'll have to explain what that is a little bit more for a second here. But just realize that this is the kind of stuff that when it happens, you would see the priest would figure it out by discussing things with you, what's going on and identifying it, etc. And we don't have those available to us today, okay? So none of you are finding this on your clothing, none of you are finding it on your houses because we don't have a system to evaluate it. And so it's not a problem. Now, from that point of view, now, if you're doing Lashon Hara, it's still a problem for you. Lashon Hara is what they call the evil tongue, okay? The Lashon, or the tongue, Hara, evil, all right? Just like you have the Yetzer Hara, the evil inclination, okay? And then you have the Yetzer HaTov, or the good inclination. So here, the Lashon Hara, understand Lashon Hara is not linked to just you talking about somebody. What it has to do with causing or intending to cause harm or shame or embarrassment and that kind of thing. So, for example, this is why it's important I say this. If you come to me and you're having a problem with somebody, and you tell me, well, I don't want to tell you who it is because I don't want to do Lashon Hara. You can't do Lashon Hara coming to me unless your intent was to get them in trouble and hurt them. If your intent is to resolve a problem or make me aware of something that could be a problem to you or to somebody else in the congregation, that's counsel. And to do counsel, I may need to know who you're talking about. Okay? If you are someone who's just trying to get other people in trouble, that's Lashon Hara. It depends on your intent. Okay? And part of the intent is going to be clear based on who you go to. If you come to the leadership with the intent of resolving an issue, I had this problem with so-and-so, or I don't know if you're aware that so-and-so was doing this sort of thing, and I don't want anything bad for them or for anybody that might come to contact with them, because wrong behavior is contagious. By the way, much more contagious than coronavirus or whatever. People will imitate wrong behavior very quickly. Sharing that with me might be of value to help protect the body from a potentially challenging, contagious situation where I can now bring it to the attention of the person that's doing something and see what I could do to help them to stop whatever it is that's happening. However, if you're the type of person that is looking for some sort of gain by tearing down somebody else or getting somebody else in trouble or whatever it is, now you've got a problem, okay? But Lashon Hara is more like gossip, okay? It's more in the terms of talking about people to people in a negative way, okay? Talking about people to people in a way that would be negative to their reputation, that could cause shame, that could cause embarrassment. Okay, talking to someone in counsel. Oh, but I was just counseling with my best friend. No, you weren't. You were looking for your best friend to agree with you that so-and-so was a piece of whatever, or a loser, or this or that. You were not just counseling with your best friend. You're trying to get people to agree with you how they should feel about that person. You come to the leadership and try that, the leadership's going to bust you every time, if it's good leadership. And say, okay, what's motivating this? Why is there a problem? You're not going to just get me to think a certain way about somebody just because you want me to. But I can counsel you on how to handle the fact that you're upset and that you're disturbed by what happened or whatever is going on with that person. But I will ask you, who are you talking about? And I expect that if you know who the person is or you wouldn't come to me, that you would tell me. Not with my intent now to go give them a whole bunch of grief, but I can't really help you if I don't know who it is and what's going on. So that's not Lashon Hara. Because I've had so many people literally fight with me. Oh, no, I can't tell you because I don't want to commit Lashon Hara. You have been scared and manipulated emotionally by the churches and others that will teach you that you can't say anything ever adverse about anybody because that's evil speak. That's a control mechanism emotionally that has been imposed on you. You have to be able to talk about what's going on to somebody. That somebody should be the person that you counsel with. You need to be able to have that discussion. And it has to be, with the person that it is being discussed. And I will accept your statement of, I'm not trying to get them in trouble, I just thought you needed to know because I think this could be potentially harmful to themselves or somebody else. That's fine. Then we have a good start. Okay. And now it is 10 o'clock. What else? You had anything critical on money? All right, go ahead.
Lady Di wants to know, chapter 12, is there a significance in the 33 versus 66 days of cleansing for birth of male and female?
Oh, yeah, we didn't get to that question, did we? We usually get to that every time, so thank you for making sure we didn't miss that one. There is a significance. I don't know that it's really clear. Everything is completely pure speculation. Understand, the important thing that I want you to see here, this is the critical thing, is that there is Torah that overrides Torah. There's a weightiness. So the woman conceives and gives birth to a male child, and so she's going to be unclean for 7 days because she has to do circumcision on the 8th day. And then she's going to remain for 33 days. So she's going to go back into that status, but she has to stop after 7 days and make sure that she gets the circumcision done. Because the circumcision outweighs the other piece of this. Because remember, this other piece has to do with the temple. She can't interact with or do the things that would have. Why? Well, if you ever give birth to a baby, you've got all kinds of stuff going on and still coming out of your body and everything else processing, and maybe you got tore up. Believe me, they got tore up back in those days too when they didn't have the hospitals and the medical ability to handle things. And that would make things kind of bloody and messy and everything else for a period of time. So why longer for the women than for the girls and instead of the boys, or the female child instead of the male child? It doesn't make it clear. We have nothing but pure speculation. So this simply starts off at the minimum, it's because he said so. All right? Because he said so. So hopefully that, kind of works out. All right?
Okay. Last one comes from Luda. She asks, Rabbi, ladies' cycles usually same time every month, and if it falls on Passover, so the next month she cannot participate again?
Okay. This may be a question that was posted before I said everything I said. But, so I'm not going to assume whoever wrote that question is just not listening, okay? But it's a good question because some of you are just not listening. And you're still going to come with those same questions, even though I said this 57 times. There is nothing you cannot go to or attend at this point in history without a temple and without a priesthood. Period. Okay? The reason that it would mess you up for Passover is because you needed to go to the temple with the lamb to do the performing of the Passover. Which is why in John we see that the priesthood and their men didn't go into Pilate's residence because it would make them unclean. And they hadn't had the Passover yet. That's in John 17 or something like that. Let me tell you exactly where it is. Give me a second. Okay, 18:28. Okay? They led Yeshua from Caiaphas to the palace, and it was early, and they themselves did not go into the palace lest they should be defiled, but they might eat the Passover. Because the eating of the Passover wasn't really the problem as much as the performing of it was. They couldn't perform it in an unclean state. Okay? And so this is where the critical piece comes in. So you can attend and go to everything and do everything at this point. All right?
In their defense, I did take that question prior.
No, I'm saying it probably wasn't that person, but I can tell you I'm still going to get questions from people that were here tonight that just stubbornly don't want to hear the fullness of what I said. There is nothing you can't do without a temple because of that status, because of these things. Hopefully that made it clear. Okay? You are not restricted from attending anything based on this. Okay? Good. No, I didn't assume it was that person. I assumed they typed it in before I ever got to that stuff. So if whoever wrote the question, don't be mad. I'm not picking on you. Okay? But I will tell you, we will still get these questions because if you've already embraced the answer that you are wanting or believe is right, you will still not be able to hear what I'm saying. Because what you were looking for was confirmation of what you already thought. And if I don't give it to you, you just can't receive. Because you've already gotten yourself convinced. You know, it says a man who's convinced in his own mind, right? You're not going to tell him anything. All right, is that it? All right. Okay, so that's going to wrap it up. I hope this was a blessing for everybody. I hope that you benefited in whatever way you were supposed to benefit. Appreciate Brianna and Manny reading tonight to help with the readings. I mean, obviously we have a very empty room here. Don't have a lot of people to read, so we're trying to make this work out and keep it as hygienic as we can, so to speak. Okay, so we're doing that. Otherwise, we'd have to have the upper lip covered and we'd be yelling unclean, unclean, especially this microphone that you know, I'm the only one who touched it, although you guys did breathe on it, but I guess, you know. All right, and so did I. But anyway, so we're going to wrap this up. We're going to ask Manny to close us in prayer, and then we'll have Brianna come up here and just wave goodbye with me. Okay. So if you want to all rise, we'll close in prayer.
Avinu Malkeinu, our Father, our King, thank you so much for this wonderful evening. Thank you for being such an incredible creator. Thank you for being such a loving Father. Thank you for giving us your Torah. Thank you for all the things that are happening today. Thank you for allowing us one more day to be able to worship you and read your Torah and love you and to be able to walk this out as best we can. We are grateful. Thank you for this ministry. Thank you for this time. I pray that whatever we needed to take, we take tonight. Whatever was not of you that we may forget. Abba, thank you so much for everything that you do. Thank you for your word. Thank you for this ministry. Thank you for this teacher. And I ask that you bless those and be with those that are with us tonight. Everybody, our extended family out there, allow us to just come together, become stronger, become a stronger body. Help us to help this leadership to continue to work together to serve the body. In Yeshua's name I pray. Amen.
Amen. Amen. Appreciate that, Manny. Brianna, come on up. This is my daughter in whom I'm well pleased. All right, so on 3, the 2 of us, we're going to just wish everybody a Laila Tov, a Shavua Tov. So Laila Tov is good night, Shavua Tov is good week, and then we're going to tell them we love them, all right? All right, here we go. 1, 2, 3. Laila Tov, Shavua Tov, we love you.